Welcome to Voices of the Community, which explores critical issues facing Northern California communities. We introduce you to the voices of community thought leaders and change makers who are working on solutions that face our fellow individual community members, neighborhoods, cities, and our region. This is George Koster, your host. This episode is part of our series exploring COVID-19's impact on nonprofits and small businesses in the San Francisco Bay Area. Back in April of 2020, when we decided to create this ongoing series on COVID-19's impact, first on nonprofits and then on small businesses in the San Francisco Bay Area, we, like you, had no idea how long the pandemic would go on and what the health and economic impact would be in our community. Going into 2021, the pandemic is now killing more people, shutting down more nonprofits and small businesses, along with wiping out the livelihoods of families, neighborhoods, and communities. We will continue to shine a spotlight on the nonprofits and small businesses that make up the fabric of our community, along with the founders and staff who are struggling to deal with the impact of the COVID-19 pandemic on their operations, services, and sustainability until we can all get to the other side of the pandemic. Along the way, we will also share with you all the amazing solutions that our nonprofits, small businesses, foundations, and government leaders are working on to help us all get to the other side of the pandemic and come together to rebuild our communities with more economic, social, and environmental equality.
So I think one of the biggest impacts to the youth and the families is just being able to learn that's such a big part. And just knowing the history of your city is very, very important. And if you want to make change, you got to know what has happened before. And, that also allows for history to not repeat itself. And I think it builds for more resilient youth.
This is the Community Program Coordinator, Alex Velasco, of Literacy for Environmental Justice. We wanted to feature the work of Literacy for Environmental Justice because of their unique and integrated effort of supporting youth in our community through utilizing environmental education, leadership and skills training, and the incubation and placement of native plants into our urban environment. I'm joined remotely via Zoom by Leandria Morton, Senior Development Consultant, Community Program Coordinator Alex Velasco, and Executive Director Patrick Marley Rump from Literacy for Environmental Justice. Thanks for being here, Leandria, Alex, and Patrick.
Well, thank you very, very much.
And then, Patrick, I'm going to turn to you and ask you to please provide the audience a kind of a quick overview of who is Literacy for Environmental Justice.
Literacy for Environmental Justice, or LEDGE, is a community-based grassroots nonprofit. We're in Bayview Hunters Point, or District 10 of Southeast San Francisco. We're basically like a combination of young adults, youth, educators, activists, environmentalists, have come together to kind of create environmental justice and social change in Bayview Hunters Point. Our organization was founded in 1998, and it was really at that time in Bayview, there was a lot of work around closing the Hunters Point PG&E power plant, illuminating all the stuff, the not in my backyard stuff that exists in Bayview. There's 325 toxic sites in Bayview Hunters Point. And really, I think there was a strong movement to address the environmental injustices and impacts on the Bayview Hunters Point community, but there really wasn't a mechanism to engage youth. So our founding director paired up with some youth in high school and came up with the idea of creating a organization or a project that could bridge the gap between the advocacy of the elders and the next generation. So while we got our beginnings in really teaching the principles of environmental justice and providing a platform for young people to be a part of the environmental justice movement at a localized level, I think our organization has kind of spun out to actually create some of the just environments that we want. So we've done extensive work with the San Francisco Unified School District to bring people to the community to do investigation, to do habitat restoration, to transform spaces like Heron's Head Park, to build the Eco Center at Heron's Head Park. In the last decade or so, we've put a lot of focus and energy on Candlestick. We've built a community garden there. We built a native plant nursery there, which we're currently expanding. And I'd say over this last decade, we've been able to provide jobs, school programs, community-based mechanisms for people to come and put their hands on the land and begin to heal the land in Bayview, but also create a platform to continue to tell people about what the environmental injustices are in the community, as well as offer solutions for people to be a part of.
And then, Patrick, you have three kind of major, what I would consider to be tentpole programs. So you have Eco Adventures, you have Eco Apprenticeships, and then you have your plant nursery, which you talked about. Could you provide a little bit more information on the Adventures and the Apprenticeships program?
Yeah, so Eco Adventures is really this idea of like making it fun and culturally relevant to get people outdoors. In the last few years, one of the park improvements that we're really proud of is we built one of only 2 campsites in the county of San Francisco. It's currently closed because of COVID, but we have camping that is walk, bike, and boat-in camping directly on San Francisco Bay at Candlestick. And the Eco Adventure program looks to get young people out in the park, out on the water. We have a kayak program that is one of the only programs that gets kids in masses out on San Francisco Bay. We're trying to put the Bay back in Bayview and also trying to connect people to this idea that nature isn't something you have to travel to. Nature is something that's in your community. So that's the Eco Adventure program. The Eco Apprentice program is our young adult program, which has been an outgrowth of years of youth development program and youth programming. This program looks to provide green collar job training for 18 to 25-year-old local youth so that they can become a part of the environmental movement. So it's really working to address some of the diversity, equity, inclusion, and representation gaps in the environmental field, as well as to kind of create like intensive year-long paid internships for the next generation to kind of like become the green-collared stewards that our planet needs. And we also do Eco Stewards, which is another program which is inviting the public at large and other groups like ourselves to create the change in the community by working in our native plant nursery, outplanting the ecological restoration sites that we have. We have several ecological restoration sites in Bayview alone. And I think the glue that connect them all is the native plant nursery. So the native plant nursery is a site that, we can grow all the plants for the stewardship program. The Eco Adventure programs all have an element of stewardship. Our Eco Apprentices staff and run the Eco Adventure and the Native Plant Nursery. The Native Plant Nursery is kind of like a hub for all of our activity. Currently, we actually have 2 nurseries. We have one on Treasure Island for a project on Yerba Buena Island, and we have the Candlestick Native Plant Nursery, which we've been operating in Bayview since 2005. Combined, both of those nurseries allow us to grow like 50, 60,000 native plants annually and provide, jobs to local youth and mechanisms for community engagement.
Staying with you, Patrick, so much of what you do is in person. So how has COVID impacted literacy for environmental justice over this last 14 months? And what have you and the team done to, I hate to use the term, but of course it's everyone's favorite term, pivot, to adjust to a world where you can't be up close and personal?
Wow, I think that's been a really big challenge for us. I think there's nothing virtual about nature. And I think one of the things that we were really fortunate, some programs had to be put on hold. So volunteerism had to be put on hold. And I think Alex will speak about this later as our Eco Adventure program. But because we're tied to public infrastructure, meaning native plants and green infrastructure, and because our work is outdoors and because agriculture was deemed an essential business, luckily we were able to keep an entire cohort of young adults and program staff running our nurseries throughout the entire length of the pandemic. So we had to, adjust our protocols like many businesses, but because we work outdoors, I think we were very fortunate that we were able to see each other on a daily basis and we're able to keep people employed. We were able to move people from certain departments and put them in the greening department just so that there would be meaningful work for them during the pandemic. And I think that's largely how we kind of pivoted. And I think as we're coming out of this, we're hoping that the engagement with the land, like the hands on the land and the community-based stewardship component, we're hoping people are thirsty for that and need it after, all the Zooms that people have been doing this last year.
Thank you. So coming to you, Alex, since you are the community program coordinator out in the community, what do you feel has been the largest impact of the programs on not only the Bayview community, but I would say the community at large here in San Francisco?
Yeah, I think our programs has opened a lot of youth to what is actually going on in the Bayview. Like Patrick has said, we work with SWSD, so that allows us to bring not only students from the Bayview, but other neighborhoods into our park. And at that park, we talk about all the pollutants and all the issues that surround the Bayview and, all the history, such as the shipyard and just all the changes in land that has happened in the Southeast. So I think one of the biggest impacts to the youth and the families is just being able to learn that. Like that's such a big part. And just knowing the history of your city is very, very important. And if you want to make change, you got to know what has happened before. And, that also allows for history to not repeat itself. And I think it builds for more resilient youth.
Thank you. And turning to you, Leandra. So for all of our listeners out there, how can they support Literacy for Environmental Justice programs and the youth and families that you guys serve? Besides, can they volunteer at some point, donations, etc.?
We are hoping that there will be more volunteer opportunities to come in the future. Right now, one of the biggest ways that folks can support us is by supporting our native plant nursery and community garden expansion project. So this is a big project that we have going on right now. It is a major capital construction project that broke ground in March 2021. So I want to tell you a little bit about it because then I'm going to direct you to the place where you can donate. So the native plant nursery and community garden expansion is going to dramatically increase Ledge's capacity to achieve our mission. The garden is already the hub for all of Ledge's work, including the Eco Apprentices, the Eco Adventures programs, and our native plant nursery. So the expansion project is going to include expanding the footprint of the native plant nursery with a shade house and a greenhouse that is going to double our native plant production in the first year. We're also going to remove 9,500 square feet of degraded asphalt. We'll have a bioswale to capture 75,000 gallons of rainwater annually. We'll also have a large-scale rainwater collection system that will serve an irrigation system and is calculated to provide a net 109,000 gallons in a normal year. And together with the native plant landscaping that we're going to do, this is estimated to reduce our water use by 1/3. We will also have native plants representing every San Francisco ecosystem. And we'll be expanding the community garden from 48 to 64 boxes. And there will be a community gathering structure where people can cook and host community events. So for this project, we've already raised $1.2 million, and we only need to raise $150,000 more to finish construction by this fall 2021. So you and anyone you know can support the Native Plant Nursery and Community Garden expansion by visiting ledgeyouth.org. That's LEJ Youth, YOUTH.org, and you can click donate. That's in the upper right corner. And we have a lot of wonderful community partners that support us in this work. And two of them I want to shout out to that you can follow on Instagram are the Park Prescription Program. You can follow them at park.rx and Green Action. That's Green Action _EJ. You can also follow Ledge on Instagram at LEJ Youth and on Facebook.
Patrick, I'm going to turn back to you, and I want to just circle back on the apprenticeship program. So if I was an employer listening to the program today, how would I get engaged with Literacy for Environmental Justice to provide, job opportunities for your graduates?
So, our design of our program is to work with local schools and to work with local colleges so that we can get people into our program. And I'd say at this stage of development, what we're really looking to do is strengthen those formal partnerships with employers. So Eco Apprentices will not only be leaving with green collar skills, they'll be leaving with presentation skills, community relations skills, advocacy skills, programming and organizational skills. And really what we're trying to do is use our program as a place to develop young leaders so that they can go out and make this work bigger and a part of more things. So I think right now we're looking at formal partnerships with employers who are looking for talent, who are looking to diversify their workforce and to include educated, inspiring young leaders in their workforce. So I think connecting with us on that segment of our pipeline would be a really meaningful way. We've also had people say, hey, we really want to invest in this aspect of the program because we know that, the leadership development or, obstacle removal or barrier removal is really important. So we're very open to we need to specialize people who understand this kind of system because we can't find those types of workers and we need them. So I think that's one thing that we're seeing right now is the city is putting a lot of energy into green infrastructure as they're redoing the sewer system and water system here in San Francisco. And most of the people who've been maintaining the existing water system in San Francisco are retiring, but we don't have that next generation of people who can properly manage green infrastructure. And as our world starts to think about climate change and living shorelines and using landscapes to mitigate carbon, there's a whole host of new skills that are going to be needed in the future that we're trying to generate. So I think it's really about aligning needs and strengthening our pipeline partnerships.
To kind of follow up with that, given that there's so much potential funds coming through the new infrastructure federal bill, it sounds like Literacy for Environmental Justice is open to the opportunity of employers reaching out to you to say, okay, we want to pursue this program, assuming that the infrastructure bill gets passed or some version of it. So it sounds like you guys are open to the idea of working with employers to actually create programs together from scratch.
I would say we are, and I think that in my experience, I've been doing ecological restoration for a couple decades now. And back in the days, we were selling a few thousand native plants to protect this bird or to protect that plant. But now we're actually growing tens of thousands of native plants and putting them into built infrastructure so that, our sea level rise doesn't impact our community or so that we still have air to breathe. So we've seen an exponential growth in this idea of using nature as a way to build resiliency. And it's kind of a relatively new science. And I'd say that this Eco Apprentice cohort that we're working in, they're the ones who are going to get to do this work. So we are interested in working with forward-thinking people who want to invest in, not only young people, but the types of technologies and the types of programs that are going to be needed for the change that we need to sustain a healthy planet.
Thank you. That was really great. So coming back to you, Alex, would you please share with the audience one of your favorite moments of working at Literacy for Environmental Justice?
Wow, there's a lot, actually. I've been at Ledge for about 2.5 years and have gone through a lot with them. I think maybe one of my favorite moments this last year during the BLM protest, it was great being able to go out to those rallies with an employer. And we went out as a group with the Eco Apprentices and, we demonstrated with the community. And that moment, really showed we don't just plant plants. We go out and show our stance. It's not just doing this stewardship work. We do activist work. And that was very impactful for me. And I think that really solidified my interest in what we do here at Ledge. And since then, I've kind of really wanted to stay here. And I love working with Ledge just because of the whole community and all the values of the organization.
Thank you. This is a great story. So this is our final question. And this for each of you, I'm going to start with Leandra first. So what would you say are some of the positive things that could come out of this crisis to support our youth and families?
I think the first thing that came to mind was what we discussed earlier, which was that as an organization, we had to restructure and really emphasize our young adult workforce development crew. And, before COVID initiated last year, our Eco Apprentices would sometimes enter at different times and then exit at different times. And it's really solidified a cohort model, and not being an Eco Apprentice, but something that I picked up from hearing some of the staff in Eco Apprentice Reflections was just that being able to build up a team and relationships with each other. I think it helps young people feel like they have people to lean on, obviously in a world that's changing really rapidly. And so I think it really helped build just a sense of camaraderie and teamwork among our staff and team, honestly. And I think that that's something that we can carry forward.
Thank you. And Alex, coming to you, what are some of the good things that could come out of this?
I think some of the good things that are already come out of this is, like Leandra said, we were able to restructure and now put our mind and our work fully into supporting the community. But I think another thing that's also another positive is that we're focusing a bit more on, our mental health. Before we talk about mainly plants, but now I think we're realizing as an organization and as many other organizations that mental health plays into this. And, we're doing a bit more programming with mental health. So I think that's one good positive. We're more aware of mental health and trying to figure out how we can incorporate plants and talking about environmental justice with mental health and doing other things besides just plans to deal with it, such as yoga in the park or painting in the park with some community leaders.
Thank you. And Patrick, final question for you. What are some of the good things that could come out of the pandemic?
I would say, I really, really hope we don't go back to business as usual. I'm already getting a feeling that the world is eager to reopen and it might head that way. But if there's one thing that I feel like our world and our organization needs to really hold on to is listening to people, listening to communities, listening to experts. A lot of these problems that were magnified during the pandemic were already here and they've just gotten worse. And I think we're at a place where if we really don't take heed of what's in front of us and take action, we're going to live in a pretty miserable world. But I think we might still have time to make some change. And, I don't know if the pandemic could have been avoidable, but I think that there was telltale signs about, the virus and quicker action and investment and collaboration globally that needed to happen. The fires, we knew that this was coming. It's gotten worse every year. The social unrest, I think all these problems are there. I'm hoping that particularly, our organization works a lot with youth and works a lot with schools. So I'm hoping that there's a reformation with our local school district and that schools really see the value in getting kids outdoors and having tangible ways for them to take care of themselves and, reconnect with each other and reconnect with nature after we've been indoors for the last year. So I feel like these are all things that are in front of us and, the future isn't written. So hopefully we can make that change.
Thank you, Leandria, Alex, and Patrick for sharing Literacy for Environmental Justice Program's work today. We'll make sure that listeners have your contact information, website, and social media so they can follow Literacy for Environmental Justice Programs, get engaged in the work to help your mission, hopefully raise that $100,000, Leandria, for that wonderful nursery expansion. And please stay safe and healthy as we work our way through this very strange new normal. That's it for this episode of Voices of the Community. You've been listening to the voices of the Senior Development Consultant, Leandra Morton, Community Program Coordinator, Alex Velasco, and Executive Director, Patrick Marley Rump from Literacy for Environmental Justice. To find out more about Literacy for Environmental Justice's eco-adventures, eco-apprenticeships, and to donate to the Native Plant Nursery and Community Garden Expansion Project that Leandra spoke of, please go to lejyouth.org. For more insights into how our youth are being impacted by the pandemic and how our nonprofits are supporting our youth through the pandemic, please listen to our interview with the Executive Director of the Huckleberry Youth Programs, Doug Stiles, in Episode 19, Charles Lerner, the Executive Director, and Demarie Miller, the Program Manager of At the Crossroads, in Episode 29, along with the Chief Program Officer, Justine Underhill, and the Director of Advancement, Greg Biggs, from Edgewood Center for Children and Families, in Episode 54. Tune in to next week's 2 shows, where our theme is the importance of our small businesses on our community and how they've been dealing with the pandemic. For our Thursday, June 3rd show, we will be rebroadcasting on KSFP our interview with Julie Cowles, the District Director of the Small Business Administration's San Francisco District Office, and Al Spector, an advisor to nonprofit and mission-driven organizations. And on Friday, June 4th, we have another 1-hour special featuring a panel discussion with Mario Maganum, the president of the San Francisco Council of District Merchants Associations, small business owner Tracy Sylvester of EHS Pilates, Adam Fowler, the Director of Research at Beacon Economics, and Amanda Fried, the Chief of Policy and Communications at the San Francisco Treasurer and Tax Collector's Office. This 1-hour special will be broadcast on KSFP 102.5 FM on Friday, June 4th at 7 a.m. and 2 p.m., Saturday, June 5th at 5 p.m., and again Sunday, June 6th at 9 a.m. We hope that you enjoyed the insights, points of view, and personal stories from the voices of changemakers and their nonprofits and small businesses featured in this series. To find out more and get engaged with the nonprofits, small businesses, and staff members featured in the series, please go to my website, georgecoster.com, and click on Voices of the Community to find links to the extended versions of these interviews and to listen to the entire series. After listening to these stories, we hope that you will consider making a donation and volunteering to provide a hand up to your fellow community members. I want to thank my associate producer, Eric Estrada, and Casey Nance at Citron Studios, along with the wonderful crew at the San Francisco Public Press and KSFP. Voices of the Community is a member of Intersection for the Arts, which allows us to offer you a tax deduction for your contributions. Please go to georgecoster.com and click on the donate link to make a donation to help us provide future shows just like this one. While you're on our website, you can enjoy our archived past shows, which feature community voices working on solutions to critical issues facing Northern California communities. And you can sign up for our newsletter to find out more about future shows, as well as shows and events from the organizations that are included in our episodes. Take us along on your next COVID walk by subscribing to Voices of the Community on Apple Podcast, Spotify, and Google Podcast, or wherever you get your podcast. You can follow us on Twitter at George Coster, and we'd love to hear from you with feedback and show ideas, so send us an email to george@georgecoster.com. I'm George Coster in San Francisco, and thank you for listening.